Hello, third grade, and welcome to Unit 2, Week 5 of Language Arts. This is the last week of Unit 2. After that, we're going to get started with Unit 3. So let's go ahead and jump into our vocabulary. Our first vocabulary word is the word bounce. So to bounce is to spring back after hitting something. So think of a ball. When you drop a ball on the floor, it will bounce back up after it hits the floor. Your second word is the word observer. An observer is someone who's watching or paying attention to something. They are observing that things. So I was an observer at the game. Or when might someone choose to be an observer? Your third word is the word imagine. So when you imagine something, you are picturing it in your mind. You're taking all of the details and the words that the person is sharing with you to create an image in your head of what they're talking about. And your last word, since you only have four vocabulary words this week, is the word inventor. An inventor is someone who makes something new. So it's something that wasn't around before. They're making it for the very first time. So nobody has this thing that they're making. An inventor created a machine that cleans dirty rooms. So a long time ago, an inventor created the telephone, and a different inventor created something that we use at home all the time, like a vacuum cleaner. So an inventor is someone who makes something for the very first time, and it's a thing that we didn't have before. So for this week, you only have 4 regular vocabulary words, but you're also going to have 4 words that talk about poetry, because this week we're going to be working with different poems that are going to be a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoy them. So I'll get to our poetry words in the second part of our language arts notes after our spelling words. So your spelling words for this week all focus on things called digraphs. Now, digraphs are letters. They're usually 2 letters. Sometimes it's 3, but it's usually only 2. That when we say those letters together, they make a new sound. Now, the word digraph, we can decompose or break that apart into its different parts. So di, the first 2 letters, di, means 2, and graph means something that you write or draw. So it's 2 letters that you write together that make a new sound. So the letters sh say sh, they don't say sa, ha. Same with ch says cha, th says tha, tch says cha, which is a little bit stronger than just ch by itself, and wh says wah, which is a little bit more airy than just saying wah, like a regular W. So your words for this week are going to be the word chick, much, pitch, teacher, lunch, hatch, cheese, stretch, thick, truth, pathway, them, fish, whales, what, spray, streak, thread, sandwich, and weather. Now, for our poetry words that we're going to talk about, our literary elements are going to be alliteration, free verse, limerick, and rhyme. So alliteration is when you have a repeating first sound in several words back to back or really close to each other. So a lot of times you'll find these in things that we call tongue twisters. So Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. You're hearing the p, p, p sound over and over and over again, even though it's not in every single word, it's in almost every single word. So that is called alliteration, that repetition of that first sound in a long string of words. Now, we're going to talk about 2 kinds of poems. One of them is called a free verse. So a free verse is a poem that is very similar to its name. It's free from a lot of the rules, right? So it doesn't have to rhyme like a regular poem would rhyme. It doesn't have to follow a particular pattern. And it can have as many lines and stanzas as the author wants or the poet wants. Now, a stanza, in case you're not sure, a stanza is like a paragraph, but for poetry. So it's a group of lines that are together, just like when we're doing our regular writings, when we write a paragraph, we're writing a group of sentences about one idea. a stanza is a group of lines in a poem that talk about one idea. So you can have more than one stanza, just like you can have more than one paragraph. Now, the second type of poem that we're going to talk about is one of my favorites. It's called a limerick. A limerick is a poem that has a very specific structure, but they're usually really funny and entertaining to read. So I'm going to attach a video for you guys to watch, and it's going to be in the same section that has our notes in this video that I think you're going to enjoy, that talks about limericks. So limericks, I said, are poems with a very specific structure. They have 5 lines in each stanza, and they can be just one stanza. But no matter how many stanzas they have, they need to have 5 lines in each one. And the first, second, and fifth line in the stanza rhyme with each other. So think of the nursery rhyme Hickory Dickory Dock. That is a nursery rhyme that's actually written as a limerick. So Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock struck 1, the mouse ran down, Hickory Dickory Dock. So it's usually something that's meant to be entertaining or funny. And I'm going to have some additional funny ones for you to see in the videos. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is rhyme. So rhyme is something that you've come across before. When a word rhymes with another word, it means those 2 words have the same ending sound. So bat and cat, or house and mouse. Now, even though these ones have the same end spelling, when a word rhymes with another word, it doesn't necessarily need to be spelled the same way. So as long as they have the same ending sound, they're considered rhyming words. Now we're going to talk about similes. So the type of figurative language that we're going to talk about today is similes. And a simile is a comparison when we're comparing two unlike things. So 2 things that are not the same, but we're using the word like or as to compare them with each other. So if I said her eyes were as green as forest trees, so I'm comparing her eyes to the trees, so the color of the forest trees. Now, one thing that's very important when you're looking at similes and later when we look at metaphors is you need to be able to identify what it is that we are comparing. And it's usually pretty easy to find because the first thing comes before the word as or like, and the second thing usually comes after the word like, as, or like. So her eyes were green as the forest trees. So we're comparing her eyes to the forest trees. If I say his smile was bright like the sun, so I'm comparing his smile to the sun. Those are the 2 things that I'm comparing. So as you go through your work, you are going to be asked to identify or figure out what are the things that are being compared. And that's a big clue for you to figure it out. You're comparing the first thing, which usually comes before the like or as, to the second thing that usually comes after the like or as. So if I say I was as hungry as a bear, so I'm comparing myself to a bear. If I say her room was so clean, it sparkled like a diamond, I'm comparing her room to a diamond. So make sure when you read through these, you're able to identify or figure out what are the 2 things that are being compared, and make sure that if it's a simile, it has the word like or as in between those 2 things that are being compared. Now, we started talking about this last week about open and closed syllables. So I'm going to leave the notes available for you. I'm not going to go through them again. Just briefly remind you that an open syllable ends with a vowel letter and has a long vowel sound in that syllable. And a closed syllable ends with a consonant letter and has a short vowel sound in that syllable. And like we said, there are plenty of words that if they have more than one syllable, they can have both open and closed syllables, or they can have just open syllables, or they can have just closed syllables. Now, we're also going to talk today about possessive nouns. So this is something we've touched on a little bit in the past. A possessive noun shows ownership. So it tells you that something belongs to that person, place, or thing. Now, possessive nouns can be singular or they can be plural. So singular possessive nouns, when we want to make a singular noun possessive, we just add the apostrophe and the S to the end of the word, even if that word already has an S in it, which I know isn't the rule we follow when we're talking about just making something plural. Plurals and possessives are 2 different things. Plural just means more than one. Possessive shows that something belongs to you or to that thing. So instead of saying the bowl that belongs to the cat, I can say the cat's bowl. So cat apostrophe S. That apostrophe S after the word cat shows me that the bowl belongs to the cat. If I say the pet that belongs to our class, I will say our class's pet. So class apostrophe S. Now we also have plural possessive. Now when I'm talking about plural right now, I'm talking about regular plural nouns. And these are ones that we add an S or ES to the end of. Those are what we call regular plurals. So a regular plural, since there's already an S on the very tail end of that word, we're only adding the apostrophe after the S because the S is already there. So if I say the toys that belong to the group of kids, I'll say the kids' toys. So kids, K-I-D-S apostrophe, and then the word toys. So I know that those toys belong to those kids. If I say the books that belong to all the students, I'll say the students' books. So students, S-T-U-D-E-N-T-S apostrophe, and then the word books. And that tells me that all of those books belong to all of those students. Now we also have irregular plural nouns, which we've talked about, and we have what we call collective nouns, and we've talked about those briefly in the past as well. So just to remind you, an irregular plural is a plural that doesn't follow the regular rule of adding S or ES to the end of it. And some examples are man becomes men when it becomes plural, tooth becomes teeth, ox becomes oxen, child becomes children. And you can see that these words are changing their form. We're adding letters, we're changing letters. They're not only getting an S or ES at the end, and that's what makes them irregular or not regular plurals. Now we also have, again, collective nouns. So collective nouns are the singular form of a word that talks about a group of things. So by reading that word, you know you're talking about more than one. So a family, right, is a group of people that are related. A herd is a group of land animals like sheep or buffalo. A flock is a group of birds. A litter is a group of baby animals like puppies or kittens. An army is a group of soldiers. A band is a group of musicians. A swarm is a group of flying insects like bees. So you can see that all these collective nouns are written in the singular form, right? There's no S or ES or anything on the end of it. But we know from the meaning of that word that we're talking about a collection, right? Or a group. So collective nouns talk about a collection or a group of nouns, persons, places, or things. Now, we want to treat irregular and collective nouns the same exact way that we treat singular nouns when we want to make them possessive. We just put an apostrophe S on the end of them. Because these don't have that, because they're written in the singular form, even if the meaning is a group. The word is written in the singular form, so we treat it like a singular noun when we want to make it possessive. We just add the apostrophe S on the end of it. So I put a table in here for you to show you what that looks like. So I have our regular words up here. So our regular nouns, their singular possessive form, their regular plural possessive form. But on the bottom, I put your nouns, the singular possessive form, and the irregular plural possessive form, or the collective form and the possessive collective form. So squirrel becomes squirrels, apostrophe S when we're talking about one, or squirrels, S apostrophe, if we're talking about a plural possessive form. Bed, if we're talking about the bed's blanket, a blanket that belongs to the one bed. So B-E-D apostrophe S. If I'm talking about the bed's blankets, see how I said at the end of both of those words? I'm going to write B-E-D-S apostrophe. So the bus's driver, so B-U-S apostrophe S for the one bus. Or if I'm talking about the buses, plural, the buses drivers. So that's how I know that I'm talking about a plural, that both of those words have an S at the end of it. B-U-S-E-S apostrophe. Class works the same way. Firefly works the same way. Remember, because it ends with a consonant Y, we change that Y to an I before we add the ES. Now, child and person and man are all words that have an irregular plural form. So child, if we're talking about something that belongs to one child, we say the child's toy, right? Child apostrophe S, or the person's bag, the person apostrophe S, or the man's shoes, man apostrophe S, because we're talking still about just one, and we're talking about something that belongs to that one. But because they have an irregular plural form, child becomes children, I'm going to say the children's toys. So children apostrophe S. The same way I put it on the singular possessive, I put the apostrophe S. For the irregular plural and the collectives, I also put an apostrophe S to make them possessive. So person becomes people when it's plural form. So the people's jobs, for example. So people apostrophe S to show me that it is an irregular possessive noun. The man's or the men's shoes. So men is a plural, right? Men is a plural form of man. So the men's shoes, men apostrophe S, shows me that those shoes belong to that group of men. It also tells me that it's an irregular plural noun. Now, our last two words here are collectives. Remember, collective means a collection or a group. So collective nouns are written in the singular form, right? There's no S or ES on the end of it, but the meaning of the word tells us that we're already talking about a group. So there's no singular form of this, and it doesn't have a regular plural possessive because it's already a collective. So we have the regular collective noun, and then we have that collective noun as a possessive, showing that something belongs to that collective noun. So herd becomes herds, apostrophe S. So we know that that apostrophe S after that collective noun tells us that it is a possessive collective noun. Same thing for the word family, becomes families, family apostrophe S. So apostrophe S after the word family tells us that it's something that belongs to that family. I also put some picture examples down here at the bottom to show you. So instead of saying the bow that belongs to the puppy, we're talking about a singular noun, so one puppy. The puppy's bow, P-U-P-P-Y apostrophe S. The green hat that belongs to the boy, we're talking about one singular noun, the one boy. So the boy's green hat, boy apostrophe S. If I'm talking about the playground that belongs to the children, we know that the word children is an irregular plural because the plural or the singular form of children is child, and that doesn't follow the regular rule of S or ES, so it's an irregular plural. So this becomes the children's playground. So children apostrophe S, because it's irregular, we put the apostrophe S the same way we would on a singular noun. Or if I say the beautiful dresses that belong to the women. So women is an irregular plural because usually it is one woman with an A-N, but women, E-N, is the plural form. So because it's irregular, again, we put the apostrophe S. So the women's beautiful dresses. Now for a collective noun, an example for a collective noun, I can say the instruments that belong to the band. So a band is a collective noun, right? It talks about a group of musicians. And because it's a collective, right, for collective and irregular, we add apostrophe S at the end. So the band's instruments. All right, so that takes us through our language arts notes. Let's go ahead and jump into our poems for the week. So we're working on poetry, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy the poems this week because they're a lot of fun.
Genre: poetry. Essential question: how do people figure things out? Read about different ways of flying. The inventor thinks up helicopters. Why not a vertical, whirling, winding bug that hops like a cricket, crossing a rug, that swerves like a dragonfly, testing his steering, twisting and veering. Fleet as a beetle, up, down, left, right, jounce, bounce day and night. It could land in a pasture the size of a dot. Why not? Patricia Hubble. Ornithopter, circa 1903, Great Britain. While observers were whooping and clapping, the pilot was happily snapping bird wings into place for a wild goose chase, and the plane was repeatedly flapping. But no matter the wind or the weather, a pilot whose wings swing together on a plane so absurd as to think it's a bird needs an engine as light as a feather. J. Patrick Lewis.
All right, so those are our first two poems over here in our literature anthology book. Now you can see that this poem over here is a limerick. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in each stanza. And you can see the first, second, and last line of each stanza all rhyme. We're going to read another poem in our literature anthology before we go on to our reading and writing workshop.
Montgolfier Brothers Hot Air Balloon, 1783, France. We stuffed the straw in the burner, we stoked it furiously, and ours was the first balloon to rise, merrily, aerially. We might have gone much farther, we flew superhumanly, till our smart little cart started falling apart, sagging diagonally. Our adventure over Paris was a 25-minute flight. And who was there but Benjamin Franklin, waving without his kite? J. Patrick Lewis.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of our poems in our literature anthology. If we jump into our readers and writers workshop, we have our vocabulary words here for you to review, as well as our poetry words. But we also have some more poems to go through.
Genre, poetry, Empanada Day. One bite of Abuelita's empanadas, and my mouth purrs like a cat. Teach me, I beg, and bounce on my feet. Teach me to make this magical treat. Abuelita smiles. Be an observer, watch and learn. Then you too can take a turn. She sets before me a ball of dough, round and golden as the sun. My eyes wide as saucers, I watch and follow. Press circles flat as pancakes, spoon on apple slices and nose tickling spices. Seal it all in a half-moon envelope of bliss. Together we write down every step as the empanadas bake and crisp in the oven, my stomach rumbling like a hungry bear. Ah, Empanada Day. George Santiago. Cold feet. An inventor with feet like ice and toes like 10 shivering mice looked at clothes, studied feet, read about cold and heat, and knit the first socks, warm and nice. Our washing machine. Our washing machine is a bear that munches up socks by the pair. He will suds them and grumble as they spin, turn, and tumble, then spit them out ready to wear. Bugged. A creature has crawled on my knee. It's a bug green and round as a pea. His 5 wings are fish fins. He's got teeth sharp as pins. Just imagine him chomping on me. I read every bug book I see to learn what this creature might be. I ask scientists too, but they don't have a clue. So I'm bugged by this great mystery.
So you can see on these 2 pages, 168 and 169, that we had a collection of limericks. So you can see that they're usually silly poems. They're made to entertain or to make you laugh. And they all follow that same rule where the first 2 and the last line rhyme. Lines 3 and 4 rhyme with each other, and it's always just 5 lines in each stanza. So over here we can see in the poem Bugged, we have 2 stanzas, but they still follow that same rule. Lines 1, 2, and 5 rhyme with each other. Lines 3 and 4 rhyme with each other. So let's go in and talk more about our genre. So again, we're talking about limericks and free verse. Now remember, limericks are short and funny. They follow that particular pattern that we talk about. Free verse rhyme or they don't rhyme. They don't have to, and they don't have a rule about how many lines and stanzas that they have.
Limerick and free verse. Limerick is a short, funny poem that rhymes. Each stanza has 5 lines. The first, second, and fifth lines rhyme. The third and fourth lines rhyme. Free verse does not always rhyme, can have any number of lines and stanzas. Find text evidence. I can tell that cold feet is a limerick. It is funny. The stanza has 5 lines. The first, second, and fifth lines rhyme. The third and fourth lines also rhyme. Cold feet, an inventor with feet like ice and toes like 10 shivering mice, looked at clothes, studied feet, read about cold and heat, and knit the first socks warm and nice. In this funny limerick, the first, second, and fifth lines rhyme. This limerick has 1 stanza. A stanza is a group of lines in a poem.
And again, we're going to touch on point of view for our comprehension skill. Now, we did talk about this last week, about the author's point of view. So poems will show you the poet's point of view to show you what the narrator or the poet, the author of that poem, think or feel about a particular thing. And then they'll give you additional details to show you why they think that way.
Point of view. A poem often shows a narrator's opinions or feelings about events or characters. This opinion is the point of view. Look for details that show point of view. Find text evidence. I'll reread Empanada and look for details that show how the narrator feels about making empanadas with Abuelita, his grandmother. This is his point of view. Graphic organizer, details. 1 bite of Abuelita's empanadas and my mouth purrs. Teach me to make this magical treat. My eyes wide as saucers, I watch and follow.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about our literary elements of alliteration and rhyme. Now remember, alliteration, we said, is when you have that first sound being repeated over and over again in a lot of words in a row. And rhyme is when words have the same ending sound being repeated over and over again. So they're kind of opposites of each other. Alliteration repeats the beginning sound, rhyme repeats the ending sound.
Alliteration and rhyme. Poets use alliteration and rhyme to make descriptions fun to read and poems sound musical. Find text evidence. Reread Bugged on page 169 aloud. Listen for beginning sounds that repeat. Listen for words that rhyme. Bugged. A creature has crawled on my knee. It's a bug green and round as a pea. His 5 wings are fish fins. He's got teeth sharp as pins. Just imagine him chomping on me. In the first line, the words crawled and creature start with the same sound. The words knee and pea rhyme. I like the way these words sound. Simile. A simile compares 2 things that are very different. Similes always have the words like or as. 2 examples of similes are The bug is as green as grass, or the moon is like a giant pearl. Find text evidence. To find a simile, I need to look for two things that are being compared. In cold feet, I see the line, an inventor with feet like ice. The simile compares the inventor's feet with ice. That means his feet were very cold. An inventor with feet like ice and toes like 10 shivering mice looked at clothes, studied feet, read about cold and heat, and knit the first socks warm and nice.
All right, third grade, that takes us to the very end of our Unit 2, Week 5 notes. I hope you have a wonderful and amazing week. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, take care. Bye-bye.